Welcome to Social Sessions. I'm joined today with an amazing author, poet, playwright, and he's also the programme leader for the Master's degree in television screenwriting. He has fantastic Scottish charisma and an empathetic and compassionate personality. He has written fictional crime stories for television programmes such as Taggart and has been involved in countless writing for radio and TV. It is an honour to introduce Chris Dolan. So how are you doing, Chris?
I'm grand. I don't know how that guy's doing. He sounds amazing. Wouldn't mind meeting him at some point. No, thanks very much for that, and I'm grand. Thanks for being. It's great to be talking about this with you.
No, it's great to have you on. So I'm just going to kind of take you back to your own kind of childhood, growing up in Glasgow and stuff. So how was your own kind of?
I would say unremarkable. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think so. You know. Well, we'll talk about this in a bit more detail later on, but one of the things you really notice walking into a prison, particularly someone like me, is you're walking into a front line of the class war. I grew up, my family was from Maryhill, my mother's Donegal, and a first language Irish speaker, and came over here. I went to London first for lied about her age and came over to London to become a nurse. And quite interestingly, actually, she ended up in Scotland because, I don't know if you ever heard of the Arandora Star.
No.
It was a ship. They were shipping out, they're not called prisoners of war, but people in 1941, around about then, basically Germans and Italians who lived in Britain.
Right.
During the war, fearful that they might be in some way spies or whatever, which is ridiculous. Most of them had run from the fascist regimes, but anyway, a lot of them were Jews, German Jews. You know, but they rounded up all these people to ship them off to Canada. And the boat got torpedoed by a German U-boat just off Arran.
Wow.
And I can't remember, 350 odd people died.
I think I do know what you're talking about.
It's an amazing story, you know, really tragic. And a lot of the Italian and German families in Glasgow were very affected by it. And the survivors were taken to Greenock Hospital, and they ran short of nurses. So they brought nurses up from London just in time, because my mum had just about to be discovered in London that she had lied about her age and about to take her nursing qualification offer. So she got out, gave up to Greenock, met my dad. So they were, you know, pretty, kind of fairly hard issue from a very, very kind of rural Irish family. My dad's family were Glasgow, Maryhill working class. But they did quite well for themselves, you know. So the time I was born, most of my family were born. I'm the last of a big family. Most of my brothers and sisters were born in Maryhill or Partick Hill. I was born in Clarence Drive, so they always slagged me off as being the snobby one of the family. Having said that, my dad took very, very ill, and although we actually lived in a nice big tenement, there wasn't an awful lot of money. And I went to school in East End because the whole family had always gone to school in East End. So I kind of an odd upbringing. And in some ways it was kind of middle class in some ways, and in other ways it wasn't at all. I think it's a very Glasgow experience. But to be honest, you know, I don't think, when I talk to other people's life stories and the things they witness as young people, I think I was kind of fairly well protected from a lot of it. So my childhood was a fairly ordinary, straightforward kind of upper working class or lower middle class kind of Glasgow family, without an awful lot of drama in it. Everybody was nice. It's still going very well with all my family. We're all still pretty close and stuff like that. But I kind of an unremarkable upbringing, you know.
So obviously Glasgow's got that kind of it's got that kind of thing about it where it's a lot of people were brought up in the north end and seen a lot of kind of were exposed to a lot of violence and stuff. So it's actually quite good that you were kind of bubbled at that. But I think it was at St Mungo's you went, because my dad went to St Mungo's. I remember seeing go to St Mungo's. It was an all-boys school, is that right?
The all-boys school. That's an interesting story too. I mean, a lot of people think that it was like St Aloysius, that it was like a private school of some sort. It wasn't ever. It was an early experiment in comprehensive education. So it was about Catholic boys in East End, and the original idea. So it's very connected with Celtic Football Club and all that. So East End of Glasgow and Brother Wilfred and all these people are all kind of roughly connected at the same time as St Mungo's Academy. And the idea was to take East End boys and bring in West End and people from other places who would kind of up the cultural level of the East End boys. By the time I got there, precisely the opposite was happening. we were brought right back down again. In a way, I thought when I was there, later on it became better against my brother-in-law. Actually ended up being the head teacher of it. many years later. And my brothers and my father had good memories of it. When I was there, it was a terrible school. And that's why I did first encounter violence. Not so much because it was in the East End,
Aye.
but because it's very, very badly run school. It was a really badly run school. It was mental.
Aye.
The whole experience was mental. Having said that, I still see 4 or 5 of my closest mates that I first met when I was 12 years old, and that's been a relationship that's lasted 50 years, you know. So I'm always very thankful to the Mungo. I made a lot of contacts. I now know my city better because there's kids from all over the city, and particularly from the East End. And I got to know it really, really well, you know.
So probably in a way, maybe gave you a wee bit kind of more, made you more a wee bit more streetwise and stuff like that as well, like, and gave you a wee, that kind of compassionate, seen other children that maybe didn't have what you had and stuff, Chris.
I'm sure he wouldn't maybe talking about it. So one of my closest mates to this day. So you're right. I think I was a bit of an innocent. You know, I went to St Peter's Partick, and it's a mix of kids. One of the things I like about Glasgow is you can't walk in any direction for more than 5 minutes without changing class several times.
Totally.
You know? You can live in London and never ever see, in the middle class London, never see a working class person, and vice versa.
Aye.
Glasgow, you can't.
No.
You'd have to be blindfolded all the time. But I think I was probably still relatively kind of innocent. And I met my mate Mick, and his mother had just died. Just before I never knew her. I mean, literally months before I could have got to know him in first year school. His dad had been a street fighter.
Right.
And had died years before that. So he was in Hag Hill.
Right.
And I used to go up to his house in Hag Hill, which back then was a byword for, you know,
Aye.
kind of poverty and I did get jumped a few times, not a mixed place, you know that thing, you get jumped in the street and some guy says to you, who are you going to see? And it's a 50-50 chance they like him. You know? Luckily, both times I got jumped, I went, Mick Morton. Oh, no, back, that's fine, on you go, big man. So I got off lucky. But then I go in this, you know, really, really small little house and not a great street. And it's one of the best houses to this day. Even about that house. So there was no mum, no dad, a big family of about 8 of them. The older brothers basically played the roles of mother and father. They were great musicians. So you go in there and you're playing guitars all night. They've introduced me to music I would never have heard otherwise. So that whole kind of idea of the East End or poorer areas being somehow or other culturally less, I knew from the age of 12. That's just not true. This is the most culturally exciting place I've ever been. And this is a family who were in one of the worst areas in Glasgow, came out of, you know, short lifespans of their parents, real poverty and stuff like that, and they were amazing people. So that was a great education for me to realise that. And another mate of mine, Rochese, I think we talked this before, Sean, our mate in Rochese, and a wee story about him. And again, you know, there's this kind of there's a kind of an attitude that somehow you're walking into some kind of cultural desert. Total opposite is true. You know, again, Danny's family were amazing. You know? So I found actually that everybody I met once I went to Mungo, I hated the school. But everyone I met, I thought were amazing people, you know, and really exciting to know. And they also kind of politicised me in a way that before I just kind of didn't think of much. But you suddenly realise, hang on a minute, you know, why is that street full of great big houses and fancy cars and the street over there isn't it? How does that happen, you know? And you begin to become more and more politicised and realise, hold on a minute. You know,
no, I totally get it, and I think I agree with you so much. And probably schools, I mean, you'll get Amphicomer also, there probably will be a kind of mixture of that kind of, you will get a mixture of classes in there as well, but there's probably in Glasgow that's missing now. I think I think if you've got money, you're kind of at private school or you're at a kind of better school, and people are buying postcodes and stuff because of the kind of catchment areas and stuff. So you're kind of ended up with a lot of people that don't see that side, and they kind of grow up with the kind of, well, for want of a better word, the silver spoon in their mouth into it, and it's kind of, they don't get to. So it's probably, as you say, it's gave you a kind of totally different culture.
I think it did, right, the way society with it. Basically, the injustices and inequalities have got bigger and bigger and wider and wider. I think you're right. So again, you know, I'm now 66. I was from yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Can you believe it? 66. But I think I look at social change, exactly what you're talking about. It was less polarised. So although my mum and dad done quite well by the time I came along, and I was essentially in a middle class area, my brothers, my uncles and extended family, were unskilled labourers in the Clydeside. There just wasn't that same separation, you know. The classes, you know, intermingled a lot.
Aye.
And I think you're right. I think more and more middle class has become very, very middle class. And maybe now actually you can do that thing. You can live your entire life in Bearsden and work in the city centre and never see the problems in the north of the city and east of the city and elsewhere in the city, because you can live in bubbles far more.
Definitely.
Back when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, you couldn't live in bubbles.
No.
Yeah, I think Glasgow's a more intermingled city than it is now.
I think, I mean, a lot of people would blame drugs, but alcohol's always been a big culture in Glasgow. So it's like, I always remember kind of going up to my granny's and stuff like that, and it was always for like the football games and stuff like that. And you would go up and it was like big, loads and loads of your family would be there. That doesn't happen now.
You're right.
You don't get that. There's that. I don't know if it's a sense of community that's went away or, but the era that we're in, it's kind of, you don't get that. Let's all go to the house and watch the game and get a drink. And I'm not like obviously advertising for drink and all that, because obviously a lot of people have got problems with it and stuff like that. But it is a big culture in Scotland.
I think you're right. Those things are going. To some extent, partly was not everybody had a telly, so you ended up going to the one who had a telly in the family or whatever. So you're big. But you're right, our family used to get together all the time, both sides, my mum's and my dad's side of it, and there's a big family and neighbours. Is that way you grew up? You weren't quite sure who your uncles actually were.
Aye.
You know, just guys you knew as Uncle Jim. You know, and you turned it later on, you'd actually nothing to do with you, family-wise.
I know. Just
a
a guy.
relative, I don't know, a relative, a neighbour or a pal of your dad's or whatever. And you're right, I remember going to games with, you know, 2 or 3 families going together.
Aye.
New Year, you know, everybody came round to one house. And I don't know if your family did it, but again, that thing, I think a lot of people might be surprised. Culturally, it's a lot richer than you think. So most families that I knew, regardless of where they came from, at birthdays and Christmas and New Year and whatever holidays and stuff like that, they'd also have essentially a ceilidh.
Definitely.
Did you do that? You sang a song. Somebody sang a song, or did a poem, or told a joke, or whatever. So
karaoke and now it's like even when you go to christenings and stuff like that, it's like during the day, people do it, which is fine. Like during the day, but it'll be like maybe for 12 to 5 and stuff. Whereas I remember before I went to prison, like maybe being 16-year-old, and it was like the full family, and that was. That I remember my dad and that saying that was it dying out, and that was like big parties still, and so I can just imagine what they were like when they were in like the 70s and 80s. Do you know what I mean?
And as you said, you know, it's a mixed blessing in a lot of ways, but there's lots of drink around, you know, and maybe that culture to some extent has changed, and there's probably some benefits out of that. But I think you're right. I think it's a kind of a less of that family community. I notice it less. So I now live in a street where all the neighbours know each other and we like each other. But you wouldn't go into each other's houses.
No.
Whereas we're not close.
Aye.
You're never. I mean, all the Waynes, the close, just into each other's under back green. That's what you did. And you all hung about the back green, and you know, big groups of children. That classic thing that was still around, because you're a lot younger than me. And people think it's kind of a myth. It's not. It's true that you go out on a Saturday morning, get your breakfast 9:30. And your mother would say, make sure you're home in time for your tea at 5:30. You just went. Nobody was watching you do that. You did get into some naughty stuff. But by and large, you played football in the park for hours. But big crowds of Waynes. You know, you knew every Wayne in your neighbourhood.
No.
And I'm not sure that happens anymore.
No, I think with the cost of living and stuff like that, obviously it's a theme that's been running on these podcasts. We've been talking about it. There does definitely seem to be the kids are going back out onto the street, but not necessarily for a good thing. It seems to be the kind of gang culture creeping back in a wee bit again, which is horrible because it did kind of go for a wee while. I don't know if that was down to like social media, gaming, whatever, but I think it was Andy McLaren that says to me, like, the families knew the first thing that's going to go is the Wi-Fi. Rather than being able to feed and produce food for the family and stuff, you're going to put off the Wi-Fi, whatever, get rid of the big telly, the PS5 will go, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So the kids are kind of going back out onto the street, and that you can just see it creeping back in, and I hope that there's a lot of work getting done in the background. I hope that they can kind of try and rein it back in.
I was never really aware growing up of gang culture. I'm not sure. I mean, it clearly was around because I then later on, right, not that much later on, but 10 years later, ended up in East House as a writer in residence, and gang culture was a major part of that, and what happened to it as well was a major story. I wasn't particularly aware of it, even because the Mungo's in Duke Street, and then you move up to Barlinnie, which is in Townhead. And you saw like signs on walls and stuff, but even me and my mates, and some of my mates were mental back then. They probably were a bit members of gangs, but I wasn't particularly aware of it. It wasn't such a big thing. It was more actually Catholic boys throwing stones at Protestant boys who threw stones back and all that kind of stuff, rather than gang culture. So yeah, in a way, I want to publicise this anywhere I can. I read a book last year by, let me guess it, Graham Armstrong. Young Team. Which looks at that age group now, and very much about gang culture. It's essentially Airdrie. I think it doesn't actually name where it is, but it's round about Airdrie area. And it is that, some of it's appalling, the violence is appalling, it's terrifying, but also there is some kind of sense of community between these guys. Which in a way is that weird thing about you going, this is terrible, but actually that's great. So yeah, it's always been complex, I think.
No, I mean, obviously, when you look at some of the guys, I mean, obviously, when I was younger, we kind of kicked about the streets and stuff. And I mean, you went to Glasgow, it was a different ball game, and we weren't. I mean, I don't know. You were maybe classed as a gang if you just hung about the streets with your friends and that, and you were for an area. And as you said, if you happened to go into another area for a party, they would say, "Oh, like so." I don't know if you would call that a gang. Do you know what I mean? But that certainly happened when I was younger. Do you know what I mean? And then you hit an age and you all play football together and you all start talking, you realise they're all the same. Do you know what I mean? Like guys that you think you don't like, you're like, he's actually all right, him, so he's actually brand new.
Even though he's from that area.
I thought they were horrible. They were all terrible. As if a bridge made a difference. But so obviously I know you're kind of passionate about crime and stuff, Chris. So where did that come from? Where did the kind of writing and all your kind of stuff like that?
And a lot of ways it's from what I read and everything else, rather than lived experience. Although again, you can't live in a city like Glasgow without being aware of it. You know, so I grew up at the time of Bible John and who's you call him? He's a great killer, big killer, great killer.
Jerry Boyle.
Jerry Boyle was around at the time when I was growing up as well. I'll come back to him in a minute. Anyway, there's a number of kind of famous...
Dennis Nielsen?
Nah, again, that's a bit later. It's the 50s I'm talking about, so it's kind of, he was a big bogeyman.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
Name's just going.
I know.
But anyway, so all that was around.
Mal Compton played him, didn't he?
Yes.
I know.
Anyway, so there's these big cases around and you're aware of it, and so I suppose you're always kind of, it's there in the back of your head all the time. But also for me, I mean, for writing at all, I was a sick kid. I had what was called back then bronchitis. I think now it would be called asthma. And it was quite interesting. Quite a lot of writers were sick kids. So I was off school a lot. I'm pretty sure now they wouldn't keep you off school for asthma, but back then they did. So you'd be kept off school, which I hated, by the way, even though I didn't like the Mungo much, I still didn't like be stuck in the house. But the one thing I did do was I read endlessly. That's bored. So I read endlessly. So my sisters were given the job of bringing me a new book from the library virtually every single day. And quite early on, I realised I quite liked crime fiction because it's just got a certain, pace and interest to it. But it's also, good crime fiction is about people and it's about how people end up and where they are and how they end up either committing or being the victims of crimes. So I found all that, humanly really interesting. So I read a lot of crime and I liked a lot of stuff on telly and I watched movies on Sunday afternoons with the family, which I still love the old film noir movies, the Humphrey Bogart and all that stuff, and the detective and everything. I love all that stuff and they all look dead cool. So I think it was a mix of all that, a mix of a lived experience of being in a place like Glasgow. And also just what I'm reading and what I'm seeing on screens. I just always felt a real interest in crime drama of any sort.
So obviously you've wrote for like Taggart, you've wrote for like different crime. How does that come about? How do you kind of because it's obviously interesting. You watch these things and you watch Taggart, and sometimes they're like bang on the money. Where you go like, how does producers know about that, and how does that kind of come about?
I mean, I ended up doing crime writing. I'd always kind of wanted to, but it wasn't where I started off. I started off writing, I was working and I tried my hand at a wee play, and it did really well. I thought, maybe I'm a better writer than I realised. Maybe I'm Willie Shakespeare. So I jacked my job.
Aye.
And 2 years with nothing. I thought, no, I'm not Willie Shakespeare. So I'd done other kind of writing before then. I'd written a couple of novels, a bit kind of like the novels which are very kind of around at that time. So a bit like James Kelman, the early Irving Welsh and that kind of stuff. So I wrote a collection of short stories, a novel called Ascension Day, which is about Glasgow and very much about within two streets. But there's one street which I kind of wrote about in this book, Ascension Day. It's an amazing street actually. It's the back of Bears Den and the back of Drumchapel.
Aye.
And you walk down the street, and on that side of the road, there are, £2 million houses.
Aye.
Unbelievable, And on that side of the street, you get some of the worst poverty in Europe.
Aye.
Literally right next to each other. What always amazed me was how come not all the windows are tanned? Because they weren't. So actually, those two communities were living, I think they just lived back to back. They just didn't even notice each other, They just looked the opposite way. But anyway, so I go back to the writing. So my first book's about that, kind of just general stories about lives, which did involve crime. But then Tiger I'd done television. My first break in television was Take the High Road.
Take the High Road.
Which I became my mum's easily favourite song. If she could have said to me, see if that guy Scorsese phones you and says, come over and you don't do it, son, you've got the best job in the world, High Road. She loved High Road, and I was writing for it.
I think everybody, my granny loved Take the High Road.
Everybody. So I was, and then round about the shops round where we lived, I was a golden boy. That's Chris Dolan, he writes Take the High Road. I was like, but then by sheer chance, it fell to me. So you don't select what script you get to write in a soap. You do in Tiger, but not in a soap. You're just given, right, you're doing episode 43. And episode 43 happened to be the first lesbian kiss in High Road. So I went from hero to zero like that. Also, my mother never spoke to me for about 6 months.
Wow.
You've ruined my show. And all the wee ladies are going, now turn their back on me.
You'd be a legend these days, I know.
No, it was a big thing. Back then I was, oh man. So I started writing for Take the High Road. I did some other television stuff. I did some documentary stuff as well. And then I got a chance to write Tiger. So I found that interesting. I didn't know how it worked. I think Tiger now is very old-fashioned. If you're watching, I still enjoy them, but they're very old-fashioned. But the time they were good. Sadly for me, it was towards the end of Tiger, so I only got writing 4 of them. But I got a phone call, so would you like to write a Tiger? I know, absolutely. So you go in for a meeting, and they say, right, what are you going to write? What's the story? And I start to say, all right, this guy killed this guy and stuff like that. No. They weren't interested in that. What they wanted, and the way it worked for Tiger anyway, and I think it was pretty kind of constant for these series of crime things, is they wanted a world.
Right.
What's the world you're going to put this in? That's the first thing they wanted. You're going to put it in the world of football teams, in the world of travelling people, in the world of opera singers. And where are you going to put this crime? Who kills who in a way is kind of secondary to that. What we want to see is the world,
Right.
So I happened to be writing someone else at that time, and I came up with the idea of corrupt landlords, particularly in the north of Glasgow. There's a lot of stuff going on in the north of Glasgow where they were just simply concreting over really, really bad chemical waste that had been dumped in Sight Hill. And I've been kind of looking into this. So I said, how about corrupt lawyers and corrupt estate agents and builders lying to people, and then people getting incredibly sick about, because it was actually happening in Sight Hill. And then who knows who, and who knows the bad guy did it all and all that stuff. And they went, that's it, that's brilliant. So it was more about, which I found quite interesting, because in a sense, in really good crime drama, it doesn't really matter who kills who in a way. It's about that world.
Aye.
It's about how do people exist in a place like this?
Aye.
And why does it drive them to extremes? The extremes of greed, or extremes of wanting vengeance or wanting to stop things. So in a way, crime drama done well is always very moral. It's looking at, well, here's a moral problem, So what do people do, Now, some people might do it through
emotionally, like emotionally to
exactly
dilemmas.
How do you survive it? And then what do you do about it? If you know you live in an area where the air is killing your children, because they've concreted over deadly chemicals which are seeping back in through the water and everywhere else. What do you do about that? And if the authorities aren't going to do anything about it, then you do something yourself.
I know.
And then you got a crime story.
Aye.
You know, but it's still based on, and the better ones are always based on some genuine kind of moral and emotional and personal need. Aye. Rather than just bang, bang. You know? I
know you've got to touch to kind of get any kind of traction on any kind of platform. You've always got to kind of see that. You've got to. It's raw emotion. Is you can't like buy it. You can't play it. That's how you get the best actors in the world. Do you know what I mean? Because they can play that emotional and get you to feel their pain or feel whatever it is you're wanting.
And if it's no real, if the writer hasn't written it and it's no real,
aye.
I mean, in a way, nothing's real in fiction because it's all a lie. But the best fiction is very real. I once did a thing, apropos this, but I once did a thing a few years ago. I was working at the university, as you mentioned, which I now stopped teaching, by the way. But I helped found the whole MATV thing.
Aye.
But at one point, I thought, I wonder if I should start doing a PhD, because a lot of people did it in there. I decided it wasn't for me. I'd rather write my own stuff. But anyway, I started it, and I had this idea. I had written a television documentary about Scottish indentured workers being sent to the Caribbean during the time of slavery, and they're being essentially, in very, very many ways, slaves themselves. I mean, they weren't slaves because they weren't owned, but their lives were terrible, absolutely terrible. They're treated appallingly. A lot of them died very, very young and stuff like that. So I'd done a television thing on this, but I also wrote a novel where I made up a central character entirely. It's about a girl who comes across from Scotland to the Caribbean for a new theatre that's been built, and then she experiences all the problems over there. Nothing in that story was actually true.
Aye.
But my argument was there's actually more truth in the fiction than there is in the documentary series. Because the documentary series also had to kind of have a beginning, a middle, an end. You had to kind of treat the information you got. So in a way, you're always telling, even historians, you get a history of Glasgow working class in the 1950s, and it'll look very different from a history than the Glasgow working class in the 2010s, because everything's interpretable. Mm-hmm. So I think actually great fiction is, in a very, very true sense, at least as true, if not truer.
Aye.
You're trying to get into how do people actually feel to be, poor indentured workers in the 1830s in a foreign country when they're dying of plagues and getting bit by mosquitoes and no money and stuff like that. How does that feel, rather than just saying this is what happened? And good crime drama does that too. What does it feel like to be the guy who, because he's got a habit, ends up going one step too far and end up killing somebody, which he had no intention of doing? He wasn't a bad guy in that sense at all. What's it like to be that guy?
Do you think that kind of plants a seed of kind of compassion and empathy whilst you're writing? And obviously you're trying to feel that character, try to be that character while you're writing. Do you think that builds a kind of, plants a seeds of kind of empathy, compassion, and seeing it for the kind of different points of view?
I blooming hope so, Sean. Otherwise, what's the point in any art? Because I do think that's what all good art does, is it makes you see. I remember once hearing a great definition. I can't remember who it was, some famous psychologist. It might have been R.D. Laing, some psychologist, or whatever, saying that basically consciousness is like one of those black boxes in aeroplanes. You cannot get into them. They're completely sealed. So nobody can ever get into your head to know what it's like to be Sean Toll. Know your wife, know your son, know your mammy. Nobody knows what it's like to be you, and you have no idea what it's like to be me or your son or your...
Very clever.
We try and tell each other things, but we can never get inside each other's heads. Not really. And that's just we're all alone. And what good art does, what good stories does, is it gives you just that instant to try and be inside Sean Toll's head, or inside an indentured worker in the Caribbean in the 1830s, or inside a guy who murdered somebody accidentally's head. What's it like to be them? And I think that's what all great writing does, and crime can do it really, really well, just to give you an inkling before you make judgments. Listen, this is what it's like, so make your judgments now after you've experienced some kind of idea of what it's like to be somebody else.
I think it's a great way to put it, and I think there's the way that you try and get you need to kind of broaden your horizon when you're talking about any kind of stuff. And I think if you don't have empathy and compassion, the societal kind of norms go downhill because you become accustomed to a set of rules that and morals that maybe aren't going to benefit society. If you look down on people, you think you're better than people or whatever, you think that person's a right off and you shouldn't have, you're never going to be able to kind of heal. The society's, to me, is not in a great position at this day and age.
I mean, I think we're living through, me getting me a lot older than you, and I think we thought in the 70s, particularly in the 70s, we thought actually we're really getting places now in a whole number of ways. I now look at it and it's, I mean, another writer once said to me, a much older writer than me, said, everything that I've ever fought for has been defeated. And everything I've fought against has won. It's a bad time these days. Just look at what's happening with immigrants and stuff like that, going, where did this inhumanity come from?
No.
I find it unbelievable. I find we're living in a more inhumane time than I was when I was growing up in the 60s, 70s. Inhumane in its own way, but you're dead right. Without any kind of empathy, you're never going to, apart from else, you're never going to fix anything, If all you're going to say is these guys down there are bad guys and I hate them,
aye,
you're never going to solve that problem,
Where do you think that lies, Chris? Because obviously you can blame the media and people going about the Daily Record and people going about the Sun and stuff like that, and to a degree they're just doing their job and they're doing what sells papers. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's. I don't read them. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff. I think there's a lot of lies and stuff told that don't need to be told. The sensationalised stuff. But I don't think it's just that. I don't think it's you can just blame the media. I think politicians have got to take blame in the way that if we spoke about this before on different levels. I've spoke to different people. If you catch a politician on his own, he'll tell you it's not working, but he's not willing to stick his neck out because the votes don't come. So I don't. Obviously, it's a very, very hard question. But where do you think it comes from? That inhumane. Where do you think it's coming from?
I think you put your finger on it a wee bit earlier on. Actually, that increasing polarization between the classes and people hanging on to what they've got, and very selfishly. So I think there's been an increase in kind of general. I mean, I come from a particular political backstory or backdrop, in that I do think capitalism, for the vast majority of people, doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Money dictates everything.
Totally.
So you're going to increase that, as has always happened, particularly as capitalism has got more and more capitalist since the neoliberals in the 1990s and all that stuff going all the way through, is the market decides everything. So the rich get rich and the poor get poorer. Mm-hmm. And what always amazes me is when people are surprised when the poor then turn around and bite you and go out and steal your car. Well, they're going to do that because if you're going to consistently have a completely divided society, you're always at risk. Mm-hmm. So actually it makes an awful lot more sense just to have a system that shares these out. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, my mates was growing up, and I'm exactly the same experience working in Barlinnie. You're not dividing society over people with talent and ability and motivation. Mm-hmm. All these people get a huge amount of motivation and talent and ability, but people with less motivation and talent and ability hang on to the power and the money and stop other people from getting through. And I just think that we've the whole society has gone wildly to the right wing. I've got so much anger against the Labour Party because the things they should have done over the last 40 years, they didn't do. They didn't help areas like Barrowfield or Easterhouse, or they didn't.
I think a lot of people have got that view now, and it seems to be a theme again that's running through the podcast, Chris, is a lot of people are kind of disappointed with the SNP, disappointed with the Labour Party. So much potential. I think Jeremy Corbyn was probably the last hope that died that I could see when that never happened, and I seen the way they went for him.
Everybody.
Aye.
Mainly his own party.
Aye.
And then the left-wing papers like The Guardian.
I know.
Got the boot in on a daily basis. I mean, the minute somebody who's genuinely radical, and by the way, in 1970s terms, Corbyn wasn't saying anything that was kind of normal in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. Well, having a nationalised train service. Well, most countries in Europe have a nationalised train service. They're talking about him to be some mad radical about having a nationalised train service, to have a reasonable, cheap train so people can get about the place. They got the boot in from the beginning. Yeah, you're right. I would have. I was very much pro Scottish independence, not for any particular cultural reasons. I just felt Westminster, it'll never ever happen. We've got a slight chance of just having a more egalitarian society and fairer society in Scotland.
Aye.
But I would have jumped right back into Labour Party again. Had Corbyn won. Corbyn had his faults, by the way.
I know.
I wasn't actually that mad on the guy himself.
Aye.
I thought he's a bit dull, to be honest.
No, he lacked charisma.
He did.
He did lack charisma. He definitely did.
But his ideas, far from being radical, were just sensible.
I know.
There was nothing he was saying that was particularly radical.
No.
So, yeah, that was a great sign to show you just how much the system will protect itself all the time, including the Labour Party itself and the left-leaning press. Everybody got the boot into Corbyn.
Well, look at you look at Westminster now, and you look at what's happening down there. And obviously, I really don't read the media as much anymore. I watch YouTube and I watch different things. I watch my own kind of stuff, but now and again, I'll see things about like Boris Johnson, and I'll see things about like Rishi Sunak, and you'll see things and you're going, and the guy that gets to me the most is Jacob Rees-Mogg. The way he goes on about, like, as if he knows how to work, like, I know working class people and I know this, and you're like, it's actually insulting. Do you know what I mean? It really is insulting. But I think you're right. I think the division, and I think which is sad, is that the more it's dividing, the more working class people don't care. They go, it's no point of voting.
Absolutely.
And this is why, I mean, there's a lot more working class than there is of them.
Absolutely.
And they win the votes, and it's because we can't be bothered. We go, what's the point? We've been beaten down that much that you go, what's the point? There's no point of voting. They're all the same.
And even more than that, I think what happens is if you don't give people who the system works against, which, as you say, is a majority, if you don't give them an alternative, they'll go somewhere.
Aye.
So that crumbling of the red wall into the blue wall. So suddenly, people in Sunderland, one of the poorest areas in Britain, in the northwest and the south, and less so, but parts of Scotland too, suddenly start voting Conservative, and also coming out against Europe, which has actually helped them quite a lot. Well, if the system isn't treating them well, they'll try anything.
I know.
Why wouldn't you? Say, well, we've been voting Labour for 50, 60, 70 years. It's done nothing for us. So, well, why not then vote Donald Trump?
I know.
Why not then, and it could get really dangerous, why not vote a Nigel Farage or wherever people are becoming more and more populist and really dangerous people?
No.
But you might as well, because the Labour Party's not doing anything for you. And I think you've been right, sadly, over the last year or two, the SNP has been a huge disappointment, which has been a shame. So yeah, we do need, for a while we had the SSP.
Aye.
You know, we had some people in Scottish Parliament who actually were saying, again, not radical, quite simple, straightforward solutions to things.
Aye.
And even that's gone now. You know?
I mean, you there was people, I mean, obviously, like Tommy Sheridan and stuff like that, like even just things like that, just going out and campaigning and stuff, having the bottle to go out and kind of stand up to this. There's nobody. There's nobody.
I mean, since just somebody, Mary Black,
Aye.
the SNP, has decided to jack it.
Aye.
Because like she said, I mean, just the shit she gets, you know, it must be unbelievable. But also, it's just no point.
I know.
You could argue here, but I'm the only one. There's only me and a few others, and the system will close you down immediately everywhere you go. So there is no point. And you feel the way, no, Mary, keep going.
I know.
Keep going, because it's good to have your voice there and doing stuff. But I can see how people just go, you know what, I just can't do this
It's a huge
anymore.
burden, pressure when you're the only person that's saying something. And when you look at Congress and you look at America and all that, it seems to be the same there as well. And I think we push our politics onto people, and then you've got guys now who are verging on coming. Like I don't know. Like but I'm sure Elon Musk, I don't even know what he's worth, but I'm sure it's something crazy, 50 odd, 60. But it's I believe if you're successful, and if you're a successful person in life, you work hard and you're good at something, then you should be able to live a luxurious life, live the life that you want to live. But there should be a cap on the amount of money that you have.
Honestly, I'm kind of now got a bit more time, man. So I'm going to retire from the university and stuff like that. And that's keeps saying I'd like to get involved in a campaign, a political campaign or somewhat. So The minimum wage, should be an awful lot more, but it's a good campaign. That's the one I would go for. There should be a maximum wage.
Aye.
Any reasonable society say, you know what, you don't need 60 billion.
No.
You actually don't need it. So I would even cap it quite high.
If you can't live with 50 million,
if you want, whatever.
If you can't live with 50 million, then there's something wrong.
A million.
I know.
That's
I know.
You just don't need it, So all you're going to do is buy more and more stupid cars or whatever. So absolutely, I think a maximum wage, which, people say is crazy talk, but actually it makes perfect sense.
If you gave somebody, like, if you said, like, you can have £50 million, right, and that, like, if you can't live off that, there's something wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can have 50 million and then the rest goes back into building society up. Let's heal society.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that. I think there should be a maximum wage. I don't think you should be allowed to have... Some people have got probably more money in some countries.
Right. No doubt. Yeah.
People like Bill Gates, the power they've got is incredible.
And also, no other thing is, I'd like to go back to the Victorian age, because there's an awful lot of kids up chimneys and all that stuff. But there was still a kind of a sense of social payback, wasn't there? So you were just across the Mitchell Library here, and I just noticed the plaque is there. Andrew Carnegie himself opened that library over there in 1907. There was an idea if you became very, very rich, you then gave back to, so he started up the entire, so there's libraries all over the world, because one rich guy, I think it's a bit of a bastard in every other way, by the way, but he did do that. And I know Bill Gates does some stuff in kind of medicine in Africa and stuff like that, but with the amount of money these people have, they don't seem to me to want to then pay back by, creating infrastructures and things that would help poor people in poor countries. They don't seem to want to do that. There seems to be one enormous macho competition. I'm just thinking about having a cage fight between Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. I don't know. I mean, in a way, it says it all.
I know.
That's how pathetic you guys are, and that's the limit of your imagination of what you could do with all. What?
I know.
So I do think that the greed has got more of the rich are getting richer and richer, and they're getting greedier and greedier and greedier, and they're keeping more and more of themselves, and they get politicians all over the place in their back pockets protecting all that for them. And the really dangerous thing they do now is that these politicians, less so these smaller things, oh my God, I can't stand them.
I know.
But Boris Johnson does it, and all these populist leaders do it. They somehow manage to tell working class people that I'm on your side.
I know.
He's a billionaire.
I know.
He's not on your side. He really isn't. He?
No, I've said it, Chris. I've said it to my partner a couple of times. I've said, I don't know how they've done it, but it's ingenious. They've managed to make the working class, some working class people now think they're not working class. And I don't know how they've done it. It's as if you've got that wee bit extra. If you maybe live in Mulgai or Jordan Hill or whatever, you're now no working class. You forget it's very easy to forget your roots.
And divide and rule immediately sow seeds of, I'm going to keep my stuff with Mulgai, I don't want anybody else to get it. And those guys over there in Knightswood, don't trust them.
Definitely.
And the more you do that, then the more society crumbles.
Definitely.
Because if you can't trust a guy and lives up the street from you, we're in big problem. And the reason why we can't is because Donald Trump is trousering the money.
I know.
And Boris Johnson, I mean, actually, if you look at the corruption in the British state over the last couple of years, it's
outrageous.
Unbelievable. Whatever happened to Michelle Mone?
I know.
I know there's all these things.
I know.
Why is there no police cars outside her house?
I know.
Because our society protects those people.
Oh, no. So it really is outrageous, the things that they've got away with, and the things that Tony Blair and all that got away with, and it's protected. There's an element of when you go into the judicial system, and that's similar as well. People don't believe what's going on in there, and I think there's a sense that I don't believe that. I don't know how they do it. They watch it constantly. I mean, all the way through, politicians have always been corrupt, but somehow in this day and age, they get the vast majority of society to believe that they're no, like, that was back then.
Aye.
That happened back then. It's not like that now. And then in 10 years' time, it all comes out, and then they go, oh no, but it's not like that now. Exactly. And you're like, why do you think these people would change?
Yeah.
Why?
That's quite smart. Just one thing I always got to do for myself is to remind myself is for all the Labour Party have been an unbelievable letdown for ordinary working people, for everybody, not just working people, for everybody. It's been such a letdown in so many ways. They did create the NHS and they did create the welfare state.
I know.
So that one single government, which wasn't a particularly radical government of Attlee's in the 1940s and 50s, did the most. I think now we look back at it now, and of course the Tories and a lot of Labour have been chipping away to bring it all back down again ever since. I think historians in the future, if there's any planet left with historians on it, are going to look back as being the pinnacle of human achievement will be the creation of the NHS and the welfare state, which we then kind of exported in one version or another to a lot of the world, civilising the world, bringing people up, looking after people's health. It is astonishing what that Labour Party achieved. And yet, they don't protect it.
No, I watched a great documentary by Oliver Stone. It was called South of the Border. It was about South America, and it was like Hugo Chavez and
I've heard of this and I haven't seen it yet.
Morales and stuff like that. It's a really, really, really good documentary, but it basically shows how America kind of tried to overthrow the Venezuelan government, and basically the army turned on the coup and they got Chavez back, and then Chavez mysteriously dies with an aggressive cancer, but that's for a whole new other story. But the whole thing of that was when you go down, and I remember that I can't remember her name, but she was the Argentinian president, and
you see her face. Yeah, go on.
Really, really good, really good. But she said she was talking to George Bush, and George Bush basically said, like she was saying, like, how do we create money, blah blah blah. And he went, we've got the military industrial complex, and she was like, and what good's that to us? And she went, well, we'll start a war. And she was like, I don't really, and she said, I really couldn't believe he said it. It was just like blasé, like, we'll start a war, like, and we'll get money, revenue for that. And she was like, I don't want to, but if you want to go, you could go to war with Venezuela, kind of thing, and like trying to turn the South American, and then Castro, I think, is on it. And I love listening to Castro, right? I think he's an amazing speaker. I don't believe fully in communism, right? I think there's massive aspects that would be wonderful. And if everybody done their job right, it would be a great idea. It's a great ideology, but I think when you listen to Castro and he talks about what we could actually do with the human mind if there wasn't that pressure of money, people having to do that, how minds can think, where we could go, we could do everything together.
Cuba's a great example. I mean, they brought up literacy from virtually zilch.
I know.
To 99% or something like that.
I know.
Much more literate than Britain or America or more developed countries.
I know.
Astonishing, you know.
Aye.
An awful lot of kind of visual problems. They became the sort of experts in ophthalmology and stuff like that in Cuba, and they exported to all countries in Africa and places an amazing level of medical intervention that would help people and stuff like that. Yeah, but all you ever hear is about Castro and bad Castro, this bad Castro. No. Well, actually, Castro, with a blockade against him and a threat for invasion of all his life, actually.
And the sanctions and all that on his country, sanctions on his country for when I remember. I mean, they've just been lifted not long ago.
I think a lot put back on again. You know, so Trump put more back on. So I think who's going? Obama took some down and then it'll be put back on again. So I think the embargo's back in place again, at least largely. Okay, all over. It's actually coming up to, this is August, yeah. So next month is the 50th anniversary of the coup in Chile.
Right.
The first democratically elected left-wing, Allende would call himself a socialist, but kind of a socialist communist. But
was that to do with the fruit? Was that the fruit company? No, what was the?
Well, the United Fruit Company all over. And that was how the CIA and the American government just worked with the United Fruit Company all over Latin America to overturn political regimes and stuff. But yeah, what happened in Chile is unbelievable, you know, and completely Pinochet,
aye,
backed up by the Americans and all that. And we got the one good thing about that from our point of view is there's quite a lot of Chilean Scots who contributed to our society in all sorts of really interesting.
Is that right?
Ways.
I never knew that.
There's quite a community. They came over and they were put up by miners.
Right.
So a very good mate of mine, Oscar Mendoza, is one of very many Chileans who fled Pinochet, got out of prison and ran. Oscar was in prison and managed to get out and ran for his life. Ends up in a mining village somewhere in Ayrshire. You know, I couldn't speak a word of English. I was only about 19, you know, and there's a lot of stories like that. And now Oscar's as Scottish as you and me. I love Scotland. And the vast majority of Chileans stayed in Scotland. So there's a big bunch of Chileans, and their music and art and their ideas have been great for Scotland. You know, so that's one of the very few good things to come out of a terrible situation. Poor Latin America, I mean, it was just completely held back developmentally by the United States for decades.
No, it's when you watch south of the border and you see what Chavez was trying to do with just dinner tickets and stuff like that. And again, it's anybody that had a wee bit of money in these countries didn't want these people in, because the way the media were portraying it was American media again. American media were portraying it, look, if he gets in power, he's going to take all your money off you. So they scare people. And it's just tactics, you know yourself, Chris, the way they do it. It's just tactics of...
And a lot of people right now, watching the American, like you, I find it hard and hard to watch anything. But now in Miami, an awful lot of people who ran from Castro, convinced he's going to do terrible things to them all, are now all mad Trump supporters. So you got this really weird thing of Latin Americans. You just know Trump hates.
I know.
But they're all voting for Trump and all that because they think, he's going to save them from some weird idea they've got of socialism and communism, which they've misunderstood at such a fundamental level.
Totally.
I mean, there are terrible regimes that have used the name, like North Korea, and use the name communism, but there's nothing communistic about them that we recognise.
I think Hitler as well, like obviously because the socialist, national socialist. And it's again, it's nothing to do with socialism. It's no like the socialism that I think about in my head when I talk about socialism. But so I'll take you back, and obviously I know that you've won awards and stuff like that for different things. So just before we kind of go into your experience about in Barlinnie and stuff, Chris, can you tell us a wee bit about some of the awards you've won and stuff like that? And
aye, I mean, it's into as a writer. In some ways, awards are great, and always are no, and they don't have money with them usually. So it's just nice to have. But yeah, I mean, as a time you're starting out, you need to kind of make it, get some kind of attention. How do you sell a book? And there's, again, how the capitalist system works. A television personality writes a book, and there's a huge marketing budget behind it. And I've got a wee book and a wee publisher up the road, and there's tuppence. So how do you get people to say, "Don't need that book, read this book"? So prizes and stuff like that help. So quite early on, I was quite lucky to get a couple of prizes that helped kind of raise my profile a bit. It got me a bigger publisher, a better agent, stuff like that. So prizes are good, and they help writers in a lot of ways. I suppose the problem for me is, not a problem, one of the strange things about my career, which I've quite enjoyed, I'd never really meant to. I started out wanting to write novels, but my first thing happened to be a play, and then I got the job in Take the High Road. So before I knew it, I thought I was a prose writer, but I ended up writing television. So for 30 years, I've managed to put food on the table. Because if I wasn't getting work in radio, then I go work in telly. If I wasn't getting work in telly, then I work more in the books and try to get some money at the books. If that wasn't working, I'd do some teaching, creative writing teaching. If that wasn't working, I'd do documentaries. So I've always managed to do different things. And I'm very definitely, and I don't say this in some pretend humble way, I'm quite proud of it. I'm genuinely a jack of all trades and a master of none.
I think when I was researching it, there was too much to even try. There was loads, but I think the educational thing at the universities, that's a massive achievement.
Honestly, I'm so proud to be part of that. So I wasn't in the very, very early days. There was two women who I knew who ran Shed Productions, who famously did a whole number of great Bad Girls and stuff on television. The really famous one was Footballers' Wives.
Oh, right. I loved that.
It was a guilty pleasure, wasn't it? It was absolutely brilliant. So they made that, but they're both Scottish, Anne and Eileen, but they went down to Manchester and London. That's where they kind of got all the success, and they made a lot of money. And they still do, but they want to pay back to Scotland. And what they wanted to create television writers like themselves. So they got in touch with my colleague Anne-Marie de Mambro, who became the first teacher of it, and she brought me in straight away. So over the next 15 years, we could develop this course. And it's been brilliant. I'm so proud of being part of it. I'm so proud of all the students. We still keep in touch with everybody. So many students doing so well, writing television all over the place. Some will go out to television and go out and use their skills to do theatre instead or something else. But by and large, there are so many of them are still writing, making some kind of living out of it. It's been a fantastic thing. And giving writers who wouldn't normally get, so with a lot of bursaries. So writers who wouldn't be able to afford to do a course like that will be, desperately trying to get bursaries in to make sure that that guy there is a great writer. But he's got 2 young kids and very low income, and when the hell is he going to find time to write? Or that single mother there or whatever. And so we'll be desperately trying to bring him in, and they tended to be the better writers.
So that will take us kind of exactly into where we're kind of wanting to go, because obviously you've seen the talent that was in Barlinnie, and obviously we'll go into that a wee bit more detail, Chris, right? But I'm going to just take you back to when you actually just kind of walk into the prison. I always remember the first time I went into Pullman, there's an energy there that I can't explain. It's no nice. It's a kind of draining energy. It's you're obviously going through doors after doors, and some of the staff, I know all of them, but some of the staff can be pretty regimented and authoritarian and stuff. So you're kind of know you're stepping there. How did you feel when you first came into prison? How did you feel?
So it was out of MATV that this came up. So one of my students, Mark McNichol, I kind of knew, I'd heard about him. He's still part of the group, so I knew he was kind of doing more and more stuff, and he's kind of doing the production line more than the writing line. He still writes and a very good writer. But I knew he was doing work with both recovering addicts, of both alcohol and drugs, and working in prison. I was always very impressed by what the guy did. And they got in touch with me about 6 months ago, but more than that, he got in touch with me and said, there's this project. And as one writer, well, he called at that point an infomercial. I still don't know what an infomercial is. To write some with the prisoners about liberty and the problems and pros and cons. And my first reaction interior was, but I found myself saying, perhaps I felt as if, one, there was a wee bit of money attached to it, and as a writer, freelance, having a pension and stuff like that, so there was a wee bit of money, so that was one thing. But mainly I thought, but there's other things I could have done which have paid better. I thought, actually, it's a way of paying back, and also interesting. So as somebody who's always been interested in crime writing, Barlinnie, I've never been in Barlinnie, and it's a legendary place, And I was amazed how wrong I was about Barlinnie once again. So I said and then for the next, so 3 or 4 weeks before I actually started, and more and more I was thinking, I wish I had done this. And I'll never forget my first morning, to be honest, driving over there, and first of all, it's got this kiddie on entrance now.
I know.
I hadn't seen that before. The last time I just saw the big towers and all that stuff. This kind of welcome to Barlinnie, as if you're going to an amusement park or something, Fix that. But the minute you get beyond that, it's Barlinnie. I noticed that my heart was in my feet. And I think, why am I doing this? I shouldn't be doing this. Also, I'm not going to be good at it. And what's it going to matter to these guys in here, the creative writing? I found out later on, a couple of guys said to me, they're well been taken into the room to meet me, and they're all going, some wacky West End writer coming over here. So these are the exact same. I'll go in there. And then, as you say, the door after door, the lock after lock. And I'm a wee bit, so it must be hellish for prisoners, or I'm a wee bit claustrophobic. I'm going, oh God, it's quite scary. What the hell do you get here? So my heart's getting even deeper down the more and more I'm walking on these, And I walk and I'm taking it, there's a group of guys sitting around on the same colour shirts and stuff like that, and it's just guys. And honestly, Sean, took 15 minutes. Within 15 minutes, I'm roaring about laughing because they were hilarious. They were really fun. A couple of guys that were honestly could be stand-ups.
There's nothing like jail part. The part. A lot of the guys are like, as you say, is the jail part is brilliant, and it's all banter in the that kind of projects and stuff like that. It's all banter. Do you know what I mean? And people have that's probably missing nowadays in normal society. You don't get that kind of banter the way you do.
It kind of reminded me of like being back in the boys' school in a way, like the guys, slagging each other off and all that stuff, and very funny all the time. And I'm sure it's also kind of a survival strategy, if you're in there for all those years and stuff. Like how do you survive, and how do you make sure you go in with people and stuff like that, and not get too close as well. So there's all that. So I found the politics of all that really interesting. The guys were incredibly generous to me. I mean, they accepted me straight away. I'm some guy who doesn't know what I'm doing. And to be honest, they were great. Luckily, because of MATV and all this, I've got a lot of different strategies about how you get people writing. And I know I can do that. So I know there's certain, I call them basically games. There's games that I play. Say, let's try this. So one thing to do, for instance, I tap a desk. I get them to shut their eyes and say, what is it you hear? And I think, know my fingers, what could it be? And then from that, some people say it's a dripping tap, it's a guy running, it's somebody walking upstairs, it's a clock ticking, it's a metronome on a piano, whatever it might be. And out of that, we start to create stories. So that's one. I do loads of these different things. And they loved it. They were really in it. There was a good laugh, and they built up great stories. And then we started to build up characters. Right? Okay, let's just create a character from scratch. And start building up characters. Now put that character into that story. And so the story gets even better. So they were really into it, and they were really good at it. So I watched it. The first session was 2 hours supposed to, I think it was, when I ended up doing it for about 3. And I came out, because I just loved that. And the progress we made in 3 hours was astonishing. After that, honestly, I'd have gone in every day. I mean, I really, days I wasn't here, and I was going,
I wish it was in there.
I was going to bother, which must be, and I'd tell them that, they were pissing themselves laughing, and can he get out here? And you're looking forward to coming in here. Who looks forward to coming in here? So it's a weird thing, and you're very aware of it as you walk out every day.
I know.
They know. And the more you got to know them, to be honest, to this day, I still don't know the absolute details of what they did or didn't do. But you get a fair smart of it, something about what they did, stuff like that. I don't think any of them should have been in there. It's not helping anybody, not helping them, and it's not helping society. It's costing a fortune, and it's a waste of everybody's time.
I know.
Talented. And they're all, like the rest of us, have all got their problems, they've all done things they should have done, they get caught, the rest of us didn't. But you can't help but think, the rich put poor people in jails a lot.
You don't see anybody for the rich parts of Glasgow in prison. It's all kind of scheme boys, and it's people with...
Unless it's paedophiles.
That's kind of definitely a theme that goes. But the some of the stories and the backgrounds of some of the guys are horrendous. And see guys like yourself going in, Chris, and just showing people, prisoners are great at reading people. They know when somebody's sincere. So they'll see that you're organic, and they'll see that you're going in there to help, and that you've there's no sense of judgment there. And see, even that quote that people sometimes say to you, like some people say to me, I don't judge you, and I go, no, I don't judge you either. And they go, they look at you as if like,
you know,
but you're just saying that you're judging me, and people say be nice, do you know what I mean? And sometimes I'll just leave it, but other times I'll kind of say, but people can see organic people in the jail, and they know when people are sincere. So, what was the kind of your kind of ups? I mean, obviously I know there was somebody quite close to you that you were about a boy that was quite close to you, and what was his story?
Prison life, the stories. I mean, it is. The other reason for going is because it's going to be interesting as a writer's point of view. And my God, is a prison an interesting place? Because you're right, everybody's story is fascinating. How they ended up here, how they got on. And you're right, nearly always is from horrendous backstories. And you get wee. Because again, I'm not asking them. If they want to tell me, they can tell me, and some days it came out, so you find me bits and pieces. But one of them, a wee guy, I won't mention his name, quieter than the other guys. So everybody's kind of chucking ideas, and they're all really bright. So I was chucking great ideas for stories. This wee guy, let me call him Jim. Jim would do less, but when he did, quiet voice, really good ideas, dude. No, that's a brilliant idea. In fact, quite often there's such a wee quiet voice going, and I go, oh, hang on a minute. What did you just say? So, could that be brilliant? So he was really good, but quieter. He looked about 12. So the story about him I found amazing was he never knew, and before he got into prison, he never knew his dad.
Right.
I think he knew him, but he never knew him. He knew who he was and stuff, like maybe seen him and stuff, but there was no relationship at all. Mm-hmm. But his dad was a lifer.
Right.
And at the end of doing it on license, doing his last 2 years in Barlinnie. So every Thursday afternoon, they were allowed to go walking around the yard together. And the other president said, you got to see them, says, put their arms around each other. So the old man and the son who had never talked and never got on probably in all those years, are both in prison. And I go, well, that's just an amazing story. And that tells you so much about relationships, and it's real good. What a story.
I know, it's quite, it's heart touching, and people, it's that you can see you've that empathy and you've got that compassion. And I don't know, Chris, I don't know, how would you say to people out there that just go like, fuck them, they deserve bread and water? What would you say? Like, how could you? I mean, we're trying to obviously change minds, and we're trying to. But what would you say? Like, how would you? Can I say like your experience? Just how would you try and change that?
I had a wee bit of it actually. I put something on Facebook a few weeks ago. Once we finished the script part of the process, put something on Facebook just saying how much I'd enjoyed it and learned from it. And there was nobody going on Facebook going back and going, oh, fuck them. But there were people going, some are bad people and stuff, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, so you do have to, how do you respond to that? And first thing I think is for anybody from your position, Sean, on the other side of it, must be really aware of this, is I'm walking on you going, they're but for fortune.
And
I don't just mean no getting caught at something. Somebody's got to get caught and they're in there for no very much. There's a backlog of other stuff as well, definitely. But they actually get caught for doing something. I've done that. But you get caught, I didn't. And I'm sure that's true of, you're probably lying, or you've been incredible goody two-shoes if at no point in your life there wasn't a chance that had things going the other way. So first of all, it could be you.
I know.
And secondly, there but for fortune, well, what was your upbringing? I know I had a lucky upbringing. I know that my mum and dad had jobs, and blah, 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 blah. So there's a whole number of things that lead into how you might end up in there. And honestly, you're 2 steps away. So you can sit back there and go, these are terrible people. And by the way, there will be some genuinely terrible people in there. Of course there will be, because there are genuinely terrible people out here.
And there's more. If you're a good criminal, you're outside. You're not inside. And I try to tell people that. Most of the good criminals are outside, you know what I mean? You don't get caught. So, and that's not to say, like, there's the prison's full of kind of people, and then you've got guys, you've got your different kind of, you've got your organised crime guys, you've got your guys that are like drug addicts, and you've got your guys that are alcoholics, you've got your guys that are just kind of violent in nature, for whatever reason. You've got your guys who are just had an unlucky break, had a fight outside a club, punch somebody, whatever. There's just so many different stories, and you're right, it's people don't understand how easy it is to happen. And I think what people need to realise is, I always try and say, everybody's got a dodgy pal. Most people have got a dodgy pal that they go, oh, he's just a lovable rogue. That's the people. Everybody. That's what the prison's full of. These people. I was in the prison for 15 years. I was in the prison system, and I genuinely believe I only come across maybe 1-2 evil people that really were bad people. Which is probably the same ratios you would out here. And most of the guys who were even like violent and stuff like that, and they were nice people. They were just their whole ethos on life was flipped for a young age, and they were taught a different way. I taught a different set of rules from a norm. I don't like to say normal, because it's everybody's what's normal. So no, I think that's a good way you've put it. I think that's a good way, because it's obviously, this is trying to raise awareness of how do we reform the prison system? How do we make it better? And it's people like yourself going in with projects and stuff, and having the kind of the balls to come out on a podcast and say,
I'm trying to think about luck. Probably every single guy in a prison and lots of other people as well have stories like it. Homelessness, the amount of people got a story. So it's nothing new, but I happen to have heard one recently. It wasn't in Barlinnie, actually. It was somebody working in it, because I now told other people working in prisons. I think it was from Stockton. But it's a guy who was a roofer, but a roofer with his own company. So this guy was doing really well. He had his own company doing roofs, and they charge a lot of money and stuff like that. So a middle-class guy, making good money, living in some nice area of Edinburgh. But he falls off a roof and he injures his back really badly. He's not disabled, but he can't do roofing anymore. And it was at the same time as a bank crash. But basically, everything, his profession and his money disappear virtually overnight. And he's no quick way of getting back in. So he loses his house. His marriage breaks up. He's on the street. This is a guy who 6 months before was living in a middle-class house, having his own company. Was on the street and desperate, knowing nothing how to do it, and clearly being really rubbish. You're right, good criminals around here. He tries to break into someone's house to steal some whatever to try and get some money. And of course, it's caught. Within 6 months.
I know.
You sit there, honestly, if you're sitting there and saying, judging people and going, who they did this, and honestly, just be careful.
I know.
Because God knows where you'll be in 6 months. Because it could happen to any one of us. And if you don't realise that, there's something blind about you.
I know.
That's mental not to recognise it could be you.
And it's not even the middle class. The middle class people have got a huge intake on cocaine and stuff like that. The statistics.
Well, that's right.
They smoke hash. They drink a lot. And I've not got a problem. Like, live and let live. Do what you want to do. But you're committing a crime. When you do that. So when you go and buy that coke or whatever, you're committing a crime. You are being part of the organised crime that you then demonise at the end of it. So people really need to realise when they're doing these things that they're being a part of it, and that's how easy it is to be.
Absolutely. And even just things like, you ever diddled your expenses a wee bit?
I know.
Probably in any given day, ordinary people commit quite a lot of crimes.
Definitely.
That they don't get caught for.
I know. And it's trying to get people to see that the prisons are full. And what prison does is you go into prison and you come out worse, because you learn behaviours. You're taught over, maybe if you go in for a year, whatever, 2 years, there's a good chance that you'll take something to get through that. And I try to say to people, why do you not see that as a logical escapism from your own head and from a toxic environment? Why do you not see the logic in taking something? I don't get why you punish and demonise that. And then you'll get guys who can play the system, are cleverer, and maybe don't take drugs, but are never going to change. They still want to live the criminal life. And I know plenty of good people, guys that are brand new that do that, Chris. But it's trying to inform the public that when you're demonising the prison system, you're demonising a really marginalised population. You're one that's no all Peter Tobins, and that's the very, very, it's a small minority that these. So when you're wanting harder sentences or wanting harsher this, harsher that, and bringing the justice, they listen to that. So they start giving out these big sentences, and then what happens is the prison system's not equipped, and it's not built for rehabilitation. You'll see that yourself, Chris, when you go into, I mean, I don't know what your take is on rehabilitation, but my take is rehabilitate somebody. I mean, what was your views on rehabilitation in prison? Did you see any going on? Did you?
Well, hopefully, I know. I mean, I didn't see much other than what I did. I mean, hopefully, the very fact there are people in doing things like that and they're bringing people like me in, then hopefully, then there's the well-being department. There's all that. I'm aware of all these people doing things round about, and a lot of them actually, that's the prisoners themselves. Who are quite often, the movers and shakers in there. So yeah, I did come. Because weirdly, I come away from Barlinnie working, and I might have been lucky, Sean, but the 8 or 9 guys that I worked with over the 6 weeks I'm still working with, and the various people maybe beyond that, for me, it was kind of a place of hope. I mean, I genuinely liked it, and I thought there was a real sense of, I mean, it's hell, you know. I mean, your story about taking drugs in prison, that same wee guy, Jim, by the way, the end up story, this wee guy, Jim, who got to know his dad in jail. Although he's quiet at the thing, we're writing the script. We were actors went along, so we can't just write stuff. You got to act it. You got, so Jim became the main character, and he was brilliant. I mean, really brilliant. Partly because he was good at acting.
Is this the boy that was quiet at the start?
Yeah. But partly because he kind of was Kev. Kev was the name of our character. He kind of was. There's kind of his, some of completely different in all ways, but it's the same kind of idea. So Kevin wasn't unlike this wee guy, Jim. So Jim was loving it. I mean, and he was brilliant, and he did a lot. Every time I come in, he thought about it more. He said, how about I did this line this way, and if I read it out that way, or maybe if I changed it doing this, really thinking it through. And every time we did a read-through, he was just brilliant at it. I mean, really, real natural ability to become this terrific. He, and apparently from what I understand, was he didn't do much drugs in jail. But one weekend, he did. Now, whether it was because there was a system wasn't used to it and whatever, anyway, he completely and utterly got mad with it. Totally mad with it. So what they do about that is they take him off the project. Mental. He's devastated because off the project because he's created this character. You're one of the main people to create this character. We're going to record it, and he's going to be the main actor. And suddenly, he's not. So you're thinking, well, that's the worst thing you could possibly do. If you want to rehabilitate in any sense at all, that guy could do that. Make the tape. It could be done. People can hear it outside and even get it on broadcast somewhere else. And it could be a wee step for him to come out once he's out to do something with his life or whatever. Definitely. Not necessarily become, Tom Cruise, but do something, definitely. Get him into the theatre world, whatever.
It's clearly built up a confidence in him that it didn't have before. And
then they just take it away.
I know.
Because of another tragedy that happens to him, so as if he willfully went out and got mad with it and was something wrong with him, and then you punish him again for that. This just isn't working.
No.
It isn't working for society either. And it's certainly not working for the likes of Jim. So what is the point?
I know.
What you need to do is actually give him more time.
I know.
Say, right, okay, you went off the rails there, so we need to get you back in doing more of it because you love all that and you stayed off it. But,
No, it's the, you've got, I don't want to make an enemy of the prison system, and I do kind of come down hard on the prison system because I don't see the prison, I don't see the rehabilitation they talk about, I don't see the reform they talk about, but they are working in a limited budget, they're working in a set of rules, they're delegated a certain amount of power to create rules, and it's up to the governor, and it depends on what governor you get, which then depends on the rules that are implied in the jail. But I don't see rehabilitation. I see the prison system really broken now. I see a lot of drugs in it. I see a lot of kind of lost souls that need help. And it's projects like yourself that bring these things out. But as you say, Barlinnie's got 1,500 people in it. Many people out. There's 9 in your class. So you're helping 9 boys. And even if you were to help 2 or 3 of them, that's a massive success. It is, Chris. It's taking somebody and showing, look, you don't need to. So you do that, put all the hard work in, and then it's down to a prison officer whether they want to let him go back to the project, and they choose no to. So what is that telling them? That's telling them again, hide what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Don't tell them anything then, because I'll not get to do my project. Yeah. Because if I tell them if I've got a drug problem, they're clearly going to punish me for it.
And so you just telling them there's no way out. No matter what you do, there's no way out.
Aye, and the trust is broke. So see, when you break that trust, you can never ever. There needs to be a healing process in the prison, and I don't know if that'll ever happen in my time. I wish it could, because it would be an amazing thing to watch, and you can see it in the Nordic system and stuff like that where it does happen. We're miles off it, and I think it's a societal thing. I don't think society want to see it. They're not typically wanting money pumped into prisons, but it's people like yourself that are brave enough to go in and brave enough to come out and speak about it's not even the injustice, it's just the
brokenness of it.
The brokenness of it, and it's not working, and how long are you going to keep it going for? I don't think there's a massive it's not a big fault on yourself if you turn around and you go, look, hold my hands up, it's not working, we need to start again. We never built this is a system that was handed to us. The SPS don't need to they just need to look at the system and go, look at the drug deaths rising, there's the drug intakes, the violence is rising, and it just seems to be nothing, and it's because they become conditioned. I've said it a million times, they become conditioned the same way as prisoners become conditioned. So staff become this kind of Barlinnie. When you go into Barlinnie, you know it's a staff's jail. I don't know if you got that feeling.
I kind of know what you mean, yeah. I know what you mean.
If you ever go to Adwell or something, you'll see a difference.
All right.
If you were to go to Adwell, you would see a difference. No a huge difference, but you would just know.
Sense it. Yeah.
Barlinnie is like, we are in charge here, like, and that's it. Like the staff let you know that they're in charge. Yeah. And a lot of people that go in and do these projects say they get a lot more hassle for the staff than they do the prisoners, which is sad because there's a lot of staff that are there that would love to speak out, but if they speak out, they get demonised by their own staff. So where it's like, where do you go with it? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's amazing projects like what you're doing. You're getting somebody that confidence, that self-esteem back, and then.
Well, it's societal. I mean, you're right. It does amaze me. You know, you think, and I'm probably one that 6 months ago I never thought about any of this. You know, this I'm going, why wasn't I thinking more about this? But I mean, I did know we jail far more people than virtually any other developed country apart from the States. So we're leaning towards an American model of things, which, you know, has always been more inhumane than what Europe and other developed nations have tried to do. So we keep on jailing people all the time, and then everybody keeps on going crazy about there's not enough jails, and when we do too much money, so stop jailing people then. I know. I'm not sure it would cost any more money, because it costs a lot of money to keep somebody like yourself in jail. You can have them outside living in their own houses and doing, you know, whatever it is, community stuff and whatever. There must be surely it's not beyond our ability to say, instead of locking people up for a lot of money, you know, actually there are other things we can do.
I know.
But the bigger, wider, so to go way back to where we started, the bigger, wider social problem is this endless division between, you know, the middle classes and the rich not want to even see people who have got more difficult backgrounds, and then blaming them for it rather than the system, as if somehow it was their fault that they were born into an impoverished area and a difficult area and stuff like that. So there's a societal problem there, but surely we can do something even within that context. Just stop putting people in jails pointlessly.
I know. I've put it to some people before who work in prisons, who work interventions, work in different things, and I'll put it to them and I'll say, like we Jim, like for talking sake, we Jim, he grows up, his mum and dad heroin addicts, exposed to a lot of violence and stuff when he's young, goes to care, young age, exposed to a system that's violent there, hits 13, 14, hits the streets, exposed to kind of gang culture, exposed to organised crime, looking up to people that have got big flashy cars, big flashy watches, blah, blah. The trend goes on, do you know what I mean? People look up, and these guys that are in organised crime and stuff like that, some of them are the nicest guys you would meet, and they have been pushed into that by circumstances and where they come from and stuff. And don't get me wrong, you don't want to go on the wrong side of these people, and there's a nasty world out there, and there's an undercurrent in the prison system that people don't realise, but that undercurrent keeps you on a hyper-vigilant state constantly, which isn't good for your body. So see, when you come out into community, where are you expecting this wee guy that's grew up through that, then he's been into prison at 16-year-old, been exposed to coming out, and the only family he does have is his pals who are drinking and running about doing mad things, and people become comfortable in chaos, which I don't think the normal person understands.
Still not line too. Comfortable in chaos, brilliant.
But people do become comfortable in chaos, and you take them out of the chaos, and they go, "This is too normal. Like, why is it? This is too normal. Like, I don't know. I need to go back to that. That's when I'm happy. Because that's all they know.
That's new. Yeah, exactly.
So you go. I say, where do they fit in your society? Where do these people fit in? And they go, well, they shouldn't commit crime. And I'm like, is that really an answer?
That's it.
Like,
that's very helpful. Thanks so much.
Is that look at the war on drugs? Just don't take drugs. Exactly. Do you know what I mean? Look at the state of America now.
Exactly. And by the way, as you're saying that, holding your pint in your hand.
I know.
You're telling us not to take drugs.
I know.
You're fag.
I know. It's the worst drugs and the worst. And obviously, I enjoy a pint. Do you know what I mean? Now and again, I'm not a big drinker, but I enjoy
double standards. You know,
totally.
But I do think that thing about what you do. But I think thanks very much. Very nice the things saying about people and me doing stuff like that. But I honestly, genuinely, I'm not saying this as a line. I genuinely learned more from it than they learned from me. And I probably enjoyed it a lot more than they did too. In a way, I feel quite guilty about that, but I enjoyed it. Enjoyed the whole thing. I'm enjoying going back in again. I'm just going back in now as a volunteer. I like it.
I just think that shows the type of person you are, Chris. The world needs more Chris's.
But then again, I think the stuff that you're doing. So if you're saying brave, no half as brave as what you're doing, Sean. So your entire story and then coming out and doing this and talking to other people and trying to face up to the system. You're actually, a victim of the whole thing, that I think this kind of stuff and getting more people to think about it, to not just drink a pint and go, they shouldn't commit crimes. Whoa, there's a whole lot of things. I think stuff like you're doing, and I think that is very brave to come out and talk as you do so plainly about your own experience, your own life, and the amazing about turn you've made in it. I think that's what we need to hear. So these... not just prisoners, and prisoners, I can't use their names, but, there's Willie and James and Eric, and they're guys. They're like guys like you or me. There's Sean Dole. He's a person, And stop making people's numbers and you got some, vague idea in your head of criminals.
I know.
Which doesn't get anybody anywhere.
No. And most of the criminals that you'll see, obviously, in Barlinnie, if you look at them, they're a threat to nobody. And I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to say there's no violent people in Barlinnie. There certainly is, but there's so many just lost souls. And then I hear it often on my work, guys that you knew dying with overdoses, guys that come out of prison committing suicide, and it's so sad because there's no support there, and again they become comfortable in that prison life. I hated every minute of prison. I hated every second of it. It nearly broke me a good few times. A good few times, Chris. It nearly broke me. And I was lucky to come out, and I've been lucky with social workers and stuff that I've had. I've been lucky with good social workers and stuff like that, and so there's a lot of stuff that I've been blessed with. I've been blessed with a partner who's amazing. So I've been really lucky with the family structure I've got, but 95% of the people don't have that.
Yeah.
And 95% of the people don't have anybody to turn to and go, can we do that? Like, or a lot of them can't even read and write.
No.
So where is it you're expecting them to go? I just don't see. I try and say, where do you try and fit this person into society? Where does he go? Do you know what I mean? Like,
you can't just keep locking them up all the time.
No. And there's plenty of places, like, obviously this is what I try to do. This podcast is all about trying to highlight projects like yourself, highlight different organisations and the work they do. Davy's Spirited, stuff like that. Then we've got like Phoenix Futures coming on. We've got different to try and show that everybody's all singing for the same hymn sheet here. We're not all wrong. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. We're all coming to the same conclusion.
And a lot of these organisations, what I found very encouraging, because there are encouraging things. So that I don't know enough about it. I don't know. You're totally immersed in it. I've just been in, doing my wee thing, but I'm quite taken by how often in the organisations I've been involved in just marginally, how many of them it is actually ex-cons themselves?
Aye.
Which I think really makes a difference. So it's not just, good-minded people coming in and helping out. It's actually people who know, like yourself, have been there and know what it's like, and also to be, the way you are, very, very honest about it, saying, like, I know there's bad people and also lots of us have done bad things, but to try and find from a much more realistic way, and I think that's actually very encouraging. There seems to be quite a lot of these incredibly, I find very eloquent people I've been working with, to come out and to start to use that as a kind of a platform to start to begin to talk about their experience and to build from that rather than from some sort of slightly do-goody thing, but actually from the basis upwards.
No, it's I agree with you totally, and it's like there's so many people with potential in prison, and it's just breaking down. There's I've had to drop a lot of my ego. I've had to drop a lot of stuff that I learned, prison learned behaviours, stuff like that weren't suiting me well in society. You think everybody's coming at you that's got an agenda. The way you think in prison, you need to kind of lose that. And that takes time. So people that are coming out of prison and they maybe reoffend, why we've got such a high reoffending rate is because we're doing absolutely nothing in prison. Then when they get out, they really don't know where they stand. There's people trying to help, and there's social workers trying to help. There is people there that's trying to help, but you also have that flip side where you get people that aren't that are there out to just
stand your way.
I've got that power. They're power hungry, and they maybe, I don't know. It's no nice, but it does happen, and I feel as if we lose a lot of good social workers and stuff like that. We lose an awful lot of good social workers because they see, what am I doing? This isn't, there's no what in this. Like,
you're not seeing enough progress in what you do, and that could be defeating for anybody in any profession, going, I keep trying, but if the whole society is going to end up going, I don't want to know, then
I know.
It gets hard for social workers and anybody.
And I understand people saying there's no enough like money to put into the prison system. There's not enough. Where are we going to do it? The cost of living's going up. Why should prisoners get it? I get that, but just come out and say that. Then admit it, own it, and say, look, it's a containment centre. That's what it is. We're containing people, and we'll help what we can. But that's what we can only do with a limited budget. And I think if people were to hear that, people would go, "No, I don't think that's right."
So that then gives us the opportunity to say, "Hold on."
Aye, if instead of like making kind of value systems up and all that don't actually human rights. I had a guy the other day saying human rights, you've got all your human rights in prison, bar right to freedom. I'm like, are you kidding me on? Like, that's madness to suggest that. It's insulting as well when you've been in jail for so long. So obviously we're just coming up to the kind of finalising. I could talk all day to you, Chris, but is there anything like that you would like to kind of say? Is there anything that you would like to? Because obviously we spoke earlier about your kind of cycling stuff, and how that kind of saved you. And obviously, is there anything else that you would like to kind of finish up with? Like,
yeah, but I'm at an interesting time. Like, it's funny, I was just saying my birthday yesterday, so I'm now officially a pensioner. It's so weird, you know. It's weird the generations change.
You get your bus pass now?
Yeah. Well, I've had that for a while, actually. I actually get that at 60. I'm now 66. I now get my pension.
You don't look it. You look great for it.
Thank you very much.
Definitely do.
But in a way, I think I suppose it is that thing. You get this age thing. You know, that, what have you learnt? What have you contributed? What have you stood in the way of? Whatever time's left to you, what do you do about it? You know, so I mean, part of it is I try to keep myself healthy and stuff like that. But like, you know, then again, I've got a lot of bad habits. But you know, I try and do stuff for the family and all that. But it is the whole prison thing for me. And in some ways, I find it really fascinating as a writer. So even beyond all the stuff we're talking about societally, but actually from what it is to be a prisoner. Funny, you actually asked me if there's any possible, because I write some poetry to write something for you.
Aye.
And I've been toiling with it for ages, and nothing's coming out. And that's one of the problems of it. You never know. And then suddenly, next Thursday morning, hopefully, go, oh God, I know how to do this now.
Aye.
But nothing's come to me.
Please, if you do,
I'll let you know.
We'll read it out, and then we'll read it out in one of the.
Because it's a fascinating human experience. You know, it really is. I mean, even though it's also, and I know I'm getting out at 5 o'clock, I know I'm locked in for that bit. you know.
Aye.
And nothing about the human rights is just so ridiculous, or no human rights. You know, the minute they get, these are the very special guys with privileges who get allowed for 2 hours to spend a bit of time with me, or somebody like me doing whatever. And then they're back to this regimented, they've got nothing, they've got no agency over their own choices, their own lives. I had a story which you would recognise, Sean, but for people like me, it's really important to hear these stories. One of the guys tell me, Billy, got out of prison, somebody was talking to him and says he got to his front door and says, and he stood looking at it for 30 seconds a minute before he realised he could open it himself.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of institutional, I thought, wow, you know, that kind of institutionalised thing where you can't even think, oh God, I can open that.
Aye.
I find all that it's an amazing human experience, and how people get through. I look at these guys and I look at you and I think, I would crumble. You know, I would crumble. And all these guys go, you're surviving this. And not only that, you're surviving all those negative attitudes outside and the whole kind of society kind of pitched against you in so many ways. Yet you just keep on going, you know? And not only that, I'm the one that's falling about laughing because they're funnier. You know? They're funnier. They're in a better mood than I am. You know? Unbelievable. I find all that really interesting. So I do think there's something really rich in that experience, and to know people like you know, and the work that you're doing, I find for me as a writer, that's something that I know I want to do more about. Even if it comes out in a slightly different way. But that whole idea of how we are in some ways all of us imprisoned, and how you break free of the various things that are imprisoning you, I find fascinating. And I found a lot of kind of stuff to be completely in awe of in prisoners and how they get through.
There's obviously we're hoping, like, if this podcast goes well and it takes off in any kind of shape or form and it kind of gets to any kind of level, we will be kind of trying to build a social enterprise on the back of it, and it will be kind of doing creative. So we would definitely, this is the type of stuff we would like to keep. We'll be looking to do kind of crime titan events and stuff like that, where we get people maybe like yourself, Chris, to come along and just to get like open events where people can drop in and just kind of speak to people that have had that kind of that connection with prisoners, just to explain it's not what it's made out to be. It's not what you think. No. And
everybody should be able to visit a prison at least once in their life. Particularly those who have got all these attitudes.
Aye.
Go and see one, actually.
I know.
You might find a whole lot of things. You'll find it scary. You know?
I've always said, see the Justice Minister, and I know this is radical, but I think the Justice Minister should go into a prison and serve a week in jail. Just to see what it's like. And then go, right, I know how that works now. So this is where I want to change. I want to change that.
I've done it a few times, not enough. I've done it a few times with poverty, haven't I? These people say, you know, poor people can live, they're not that poor. So, right, okay, here, you go out and do it. And a few people have done it and have been changed by it every time. You say, no, actually, it's a lot more difficult than I realised. So I think I did right. Why not? You're the Justice Minister. You should understand. So I think that's a great idea. That's a brilliant idea.
No, I know.
And yeah, certain things like doing whatever I'm doing. I mean, I do think creative writing classes are quite good, or creativity. You know, because if it's done the right way, some people are very precious about it and, you know, waiting for the muse to stand. If you do it, it can be a fun thing for people to do. The other thing I quite often worry about is, and I see it in a couple of guys in Barlinnie, is I'm helping competitors here. They're going to come out there and get better deals with writing stuff for telly and stuff. I'm doing.
No, but that's brilliant, and hopefully we can get sort of a wee poem for you maybe in the next couple of months, whenever it falls for you. Let us know.
Sometimes they'll just suddenly come to you, so
hopefully we can get it out. But honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Likewise, Sean, brilliant. Good to know you, and yeah, good to be in touch with everything that you're doing, and strength to you. Keep going.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Chris. Thank you.